This is the Lawhub podcast brought to you by Lawhub Gambia. On this podcast, we discuss critical and existing institutional frameworks, developments, and processes. Join us as we embark on this exciting journey to learn about trafficking in persons, children's rights litigation in the Gambia, women's absence at the decision-making table, barriers to women's access to justice, women land rights, and strategic litigation in the Gambia. The Lawhub podcast is proudly supported by USAID American Bar Association Initiative through its project on promoting rights and justice in the Gambia. Visit our social media platforms on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to catch up on your favorite episodes. Lawhub Podcast, leveraging technology to promote legal literacy and enhance access to justice in the Gambia. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Lawhub Podcast series brought to you by Lawhub Gambia, a legal knowledge institute that provides free and reliable online access to essential Gambian resources for researchers, students, policymakers, and the legal community and the general public. This year, Lawhub Gambia brings you a project titled Leveraging Technology to Promote Legal Literacy and Enhance Access to Justice, with support from USAID American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative through their project on promoting rights and justice in the Gambia. This project is meant to create awareness of the various legal systems in the Gambia, especially with respect to access to justice, women's rights, as well as the processes of approaching the Gambian courts and the specific opportunities and challenges. The Lawhub podcast is one of the initiatives implemented under this project as a platform to discuss critical and existing legal and institutional frameworks, developments, and processes. On today's episode, we have Ms. Nene MC Cham, Senior Legal Practitioner at Basang Sang Chambers. Ms. Cham, welcome to the Lawhub podcast, and could you please introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners?
Thank you very much, Ngone, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Nene MC Cham, private legal practitioner at Basang Sang Chambers, in legal practice for 23 years now. Engaged mainly in general practice, but more particularly also on, practice of defending, promoting, and protecting the rights of women and children. A lot of my work is focused on that. I am former president of the Female Lawyers Association, Gambia, and current board chair of the National Agency for Legal Aid.
Okay. That's quite an impressive career. We can only hope that we make it that far someday. So, like I said in the introduction, Lawhub podcast, we discuss legal system, legal issues faced especially by women and children in the Gambia. And today we'll be talking about children's rights litigation in the Gambia. And to begin the conversation, the issue of the rights of the child is somewhat controversial within certain communities where people believe that it's a foreign concept introduced to the Gambia, by the West. How would you explain child rights issues to people who have this view of children's rights, but also what does children's rights mean?
Well, children are human beings. That's how we all started, as children. And we know that children are more vulnerable in society by virtue of their age and inexperience in life. So there comes in the need to protect them until they become adults, when they can make their own decisions and face consequences for their actions. So society has a duty to protect the child from birth to and we know the definition of a child is anyone below the age of 18. So once you've acquired 18, once you are 18, then you're an adult. But before then, there's a duty on the state, there's a duty on the parents, there's a duty on society, on the institutions that are tasked to protect this child, to do just that. Safeguard the best interest of the child. That welfare principle, which we see in the Children's Act. And so the obligation then came on, was on government to legislate for the promotion and protection of the rights of children. We know that Gambia is a signatory to a lot of international instruments and regional ones.
Yeah.
I just name, the CRC, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and also more closer to home, the ACRCC, which is the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. All have laws and have provisions that would really protect the child and promote the positive aspects of the child's life. So as I say, there's an obligation, because when you go and sign ratify treaties, you now have to come and domesticate.
Yeah.
And in its fulfilling that right, that obligation, the government enacted the Children's Act, which you'd see that most of the provisions there would mirror what is in the CRC and also the ACWRC. So basically, the rights of the child, there's a series of them. You begin with the Constitution. In fact, I should have begun with that, but there's a general right created there, Section 29.
Yes.
And then there's the Children's Act, which legislates specifically and contains all the other rights. And of course, the child enjoys all the other rights of a human being that are in the Constitution, as well as all other laws. In fact, the Women's Act, the definition of a woman includes the girl child.
The girl child,
So that's where we all started. And so the right to life, the right to health, the right to education, the right to be free from harm, protection by the state, by adults.
Yeah.
It varies. It goes on and on and on.
Okay.
So really, it is not a strange concept at all.
At all.
In fact, we all have duty. We have a duty. This is a human right that needs to be protected by all. Yes.
Yeah, I completely agree. We all have a duty and a responsibility, whether you are a parent or you just an adult existing in society. You have a duty to protect the rights of children within our communities. But speaking in that, what are the forms of child's rights violations that we commonly see in this country, in the Gambia?
Well, what we know, there are a few. From the mild, dare I say mild? There's a mild violation. But we see a lot of children being used in the workforce.
Yes.
That is not quite in line with the law.
The street hawking.
Yes, doing a lot of work. In fact, sometimes very physically demanding.
Yeah.
Which is, totally contrary to the provisions of the Children's Act. The law allows for, say, apprenticeship.
Yes.
Very light work to sort of, instill sense of responsibility and sort of prepare the child, maybe in a trade or whatever. But it's very restricted.
Yes.
So we see that aspect, forced labor. Sometimes we do. I mean, children are forced to go out there and work to bring money home.
Yes.
Not so much, I would like to believe, in the Gambia, but really it does exist. Others also, children tend to be forgotten about. They're just children.
Yes.
I mean, physical violence, we see that.
Yeah.
There's one thing to bring up your child properly and to discipline, and another thing to really inflict violence and abuse them.
Yes.
So that does happen, sadly. Also, I mean, FGM, practicing cultural,
the trending topic.
cultural practices on children, harmful ones for that matter, early marriage and all of that. And I'm glad you mentioned the perception, the belief by so many is that these are Western concepts.
Yes.
I don't believe they may be, but we also had them.
Yes.
We have them, and we will continue to have these feelings of the need to protect. It's a universal right.
It is.
It's a human right, a right that everybody is born with. Not to be abused, not to have harm inflicted on you, particularly without your consent.
Yes.
For non-medical reasons. So I don't know. I know it's very topical, whether this is the right time to start talking, to say a little bit about it or not. Perhaps if it is, I can say my piece.
I believe so. I
Yes.
believe this is the right platform, because we're talking about the rights of children and litigating the rights of children. So I believe this is a very good platform to talk about.
Yes, because here I see, particularly with FGMC, a lot of misconceptions. Yeah?
Yes.
And I see that there are a lot of people who just, I would say, bury their heads in the sand and just are very dogmatic and very, sort of narrow-minded about this is what I believe and this is
And
it.
this is it, yeah.
And I think we need dialogue. I think we need to talk to each other. We need to stop condemning each other. We need to stop abusing each other. It's not about us. We are adults.
Yes,
it's about the
it's
children
about the
that
children.
need protecting. So the adults need to know how to go about it. Why should it be personal? It should not be. I never take such issues personal at all. And I don't think we should. When we do, and we do so emotionally, then there is a problem.
Yes.
So we hear about it being Islamic, hear about it, it's a cultural practice. It existed before Islam. It did. And as far as I know, I have consulted a lot of religious scholars here and abroad. And they have said to me, I certainly know it's not in the Quran.
Yes.
So it's not obligatory, I think. Yeah, it is not in there.
It is not in the Quran.
So that is agreed. And the Sunnah bit of it also, I have been told that it is not.
Yes.
If anything, it's weak and it's questionable.
It's
even
very
that
questionable,
Sunnah.
yes.
And I want to take a different perspective. I want to say that, as we say in law, assuming without conceding, it is actually a Sunnah. It is harmful.
Yes.
It is harmful to the child. It inflicts pain, it inflicts suffering, it inflicts a lot of other terrible conditions on the child, has a lot of negative implications. And there is a provision, or there are provisions in the Quran that say that any such should not be inflicted.
Do no harm principle.
No, do no harm principle. It is there. And that supersedes, because that one is in the Quran.
It is.
So even if people were to believe that it is, I'm not saying it is, then if it's harmful, I listened to, just quickly,
Yes.
an ustaz just yesterday, on the radio as I was driving, and I heard him making a pronouncement on this. I reached the court, but I thought, let me stay in the car and listen to how he ends. And that is what he said. He said it's arguable. I mean, it's debatable. We cannot convince each other, maybe, on whether it is a sunnah or not. But if he said the same doctors that you go to when you are sick, when you have diabetes, when you have AIDS, when you have high blood pressure, when you have any disease, cancer, and they tell you that this is what is good for your condition, this is good, this is not good, this is good for your health, it is not. It says when they tell us that FGMC is harmful to our children, we ought to stop.
Yes.
Even if we believe we should be doing it. And I don't know the benefits. One single benefit. I'm waiting for the pro-campaigners to tell me one single thing that is good about it. If it's about what they perceived to be promiscuity, it doesn't work.
It has not
at all.
At all.
So I don't know why we're still hanging on to this. So I urge the dialogue. I urge stakeholders to open their minds. Parents, use that mind and think about the child. It's not about you. It's about the child.
Yes.
And some children are scarred for life. They are doomed with infections for life.
Complications.
Some have
health
complications and all sorts of things. So if they know more than the God that has created us, what should or should not form part of a person's organs, sexual organs, really, And I also want to disagree with the comparison when they say male circumcisions, female circumcision. It's not the same.
It's not the same.
What is performed, the male circumcision is sunnah. We know that. We have been told that. For health reasons, for all sorts of cleanliness.
Cleanliness, yes.
The other one, and that does not involve removing of the organ. It doesn't. A sexual organ, but FGMC does.
It does, yeah.
There's so many differences. And so I urge people to, tensions to come down and for us to sit and be educated.
Yes.
I dare them to allow themselves to watch the procedure actually being performed on the child. When I could not sleep for days when I saw that. The pain, even the way it is done, holding down this child who's screaming and inflicting the most terrible pain, which many who are campaigning will never know about.
They will never know about.
Really. I could go on and on going on this topic for a very long time, but I urge dialogue instead of castigating each other, and if your right ends where another right begins. So who has a right to determine what should or should not form part of a sexual organ of somebody?
Yeah. Yes.
You can do it if you allow people to go up to 18 and they want to have it performed on them, they feel free to go, just like they have piercings and things. But until then, we have a duty to protect the child, the girl child.
We do.
Yes,
we do.
we do.
And I agree completely. It's a matter of protecting children. And I'm also of the firm belief that we should use whatever platform we have, like this one, to discuss the issue, even if briefly, because it affects the rights of children. And like I told someone I had the conversation with, who said that they had circumcised their children. And I told her, do you think your child would have agreed as an adult now to do it? And they said, no. I'm like, yeah, so now you're taking the option from them as a child. You're inflicting harm on them, doing something that, as an adult, if you were to ask their opinion, they wouldn't agree to doing. So, yeah.
And why? I want to know why it is done.
Culture.
That question. No, that's not good enough.
No.
Why? What to what end? What use is it to what do we want to achieve?
No, yeah.
I think
that's important.
That's important. But then again, we should not condemn each other and talk about either
absolutely,
side.
Absolutely. I think the dialogue is important.
Yes,
having reasonable conversations on it is important. Yes. So having spoken extensively on what rights of children entails and how we came about having these protections, I think it's important to go into narrow the discussion down into litigating the rights of children in the Gambia. And specifically, I think we should begin by asking you what courts, we know we have subordinate courts and the superior courts, children's courts, magistrates courts, etc. But which of our courts can a person go to enforce the rights of children in the Gambia?
Well, it's the High Court.
It's the High
to
Court.
Enforce, yes. If you seek to enforce a constitutional right which has been denied you, you go to the High Court.
Yes.
But there's a court specifically created in by the Children's Act, which is the Children's Court, a court that is specifically for presiding over matters affecting children, civil and criminal. Yes. So, so all matters involving children ought to be filed in the Children's Court, except where it involves treason, which is like one of the most serious offenses. If a child is involved and ought to be charged with treason, then the case will not be in the Children's Court, it will be in the High Court. Also, when a child is jointly charged with an adult, that case also may not be in the Children's Court, may be in the will be in whichever court that is appropriate, which is the High Court. But at the end of the case, though, the child will be sent back to the Children's Court for sentencing.
Where a child is charged at the High Court.
Yes. Where the hearing and the trial, everything took place in the High Court. When it comes to we use order instead of sentencing because what the Children's Act does, it tries to use a different language.
Okay.
Not the aggressive and condemned language that we use against adults, but sort of for sentence, the court would use an order.
Okay.
Exactly. It avoids using the harsh language anyway.
Yes.
So the child will be taken back to the Children's Court for an order to be made against them if they are found guilty.
Okay.
Yes, but all other matters, including adoption issues, custody, maintenance, criminal cases, are presided over by the Children's Court, which is the composition of a magistrate and 2 other lay people.
So we know that issues of custody, like you said, custody, adoption, etc., paternity orders and whatnot, they're presided over by the Children's Court. So how would you litigate the rights of a child, especially in the case of a custody or adoption issue? What processes do you use to approach the Children's Court? What does litigating in that sense look like?
Yes, let me say custody first, because that is very common.
Yes,
particularly where the 2 parents are divorced,
yes,
for example, or weren't married. Often you'll find them fighting over custody of the children.
Yes.
So whoever goes first will file the action in the Children's Court. Usually through lawyers, but I've seen many who do it on their own. They get assistance from the registry too. But, if you can't afford the services of a lawyer, you may have to do it yourself. So it is filed and the other party is served and the court hears the matter. But one thing that is very important is the welfare principle.
Yes.
The court at all times looks at the best interest of the child.
What does that mean?
What safeguards the child. Making sure that this is what's best for the child's protection, development, free from harm, just basically safeguards the interests of the child.
Okay.
So the court is not distracted by the two arguments, two parents fighting over the child. At the end of the day, the court has actually denied custody to both parents and given to, yes, because being with the parents may not be what is the best for the child. The environment may not be conducive. It could be an abusive one. It could be a neglected one for the child. So the court is focused on what is the best interest of the child at all times. And at the end of the day, it could decide to give custody to one. Shared custody is also given, where both parents will have. Perhaps one would have the main custody, main part of the time weekdays, the other perhaps weekends.
Yes.
And then maintenance could also be ordered. Maintenance orders could be made for monies to be paid, because the both parents are jointly responsible for bringing up the child and taking care of the child. So that is in terms of and adoption also. If you wish, if one wishes to adopt a child, we see that some people do that. They go to the shelter where abandoned babies are, and sometimes even the hospital.
Yes.
And they want to go through the procedure of adopting. Before you can apply to adopt, you have to have fostered the child for 3 years at least.
Okay.
Because the law wants to make sure that you actually know the child. There's bonding, you've taken care, you prove that you can actually take care of the child. Not with because the formal adoption, the result of the formal adoption is as though you gave birth to that child.
Oh.
In law.
Yes.
I know that has issues with our religion, because the religion does not recognize that.
Yes.
But in law, the adoption, the effects of that is that once the order is pronounced that you are legally adopted somebody, they are your child in every respect that one can see. So then the law requires prerequisites to be done, like you have to have fostered.
So that means the biological parents can no longer make any decisions affecting the child.
No, it means legally.
Yeah, legally.
If the person who adopted is the mother, for example, legally, where's your mother? They step up.
They step up
Legally. That's why I said it's slightly different with the religion, because that would never take that biological right from the mother. But our laws, it's just for recognition purposes. And the fact that you are now responsible for bringing up this child to the best of your ability as their parent.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's very important to know, because every once in a while you hear people who say, oh, I want to adopt this child. And I always tell them, adopting a child legally is completely different from what you know it as a culture. Because here what we know is then say the halabi. You just take the child and that's it. Yeah. But if it's legally, it means you have all rights to make decisions on the life of the child. So the biological parent basically, on the legal sense, like you said, no longer has that right. And I think that's important for people to know.
It's important, particularly when it comes to inheritance.
Yes.
See, because there, if you go to the legal aspect of matters, if you go to religious aspect of matters, it does not change.
Yes.
Whether you bring up that child, if you die, only those entitled to inherit you will do. So it's good to know some of these things.
It is.
Yeah. And make the distinction so that people understand when they make choices, the consequences of the choices. I once had one where the parent agreed to sign adoption. An American lady wanted to adopt a child and really loves the child, was just the best. But when he went to the social welfare, I think somebody told him that this means that you are no longer the father. In the context that he understood it,
yes.
he changed his mind.
Oh.
He changed his mind, and But anyway, that's just. But we have the right to know what the law
Yes,
says.
we have a right to know, and yeah, what we've discussed now basically is the civil aspect of it. But in terms of criminal aspect, does the children's court litigate criminal cases?
Oh yes, sure. Yeah, it's except for, as I said, treason and when the child is jointly charged with an adult.
Yes,
It handles all matters, and so. Why? Because it's this special criminal justice system that has been created for the child, that is more friendly, that is more understanding, that is more delicate in terms of the way it cares and handles the issues. From the moment of arrest till the end of the case, the child should be treated different because he is vulnerable, he is young, he may or not even know the consequences of what he is alleged to have done. And the Children's Act gives 12 years as the age of responsibility, for which you can now be taken to task.
What does that mean?
Oh, that means that you can now be taken to task if you do something.
You can be
if you
arrested.
violate the law. Yes, exactly. And then you'll be dealt with as a child. Whereas the adult could just be arrested and taken.
Yes.
There are steps that should be taken to safeguard that. Even the interrogation is called the interview.
Okay.
Of the child. You cannot do it alone. You have to do it in the presence of either the parents, guardian, or if nobody is available, social welfare officer. That's just to make sure that there's somebody else watching and keeping out, to safeguard so that the rights of the child will not be violated.
So the child should never be interviewed without an adult present.
Certainly, or anybody else apart from the police. And there's the child welfare unit that has been created.
Yes.
And I think a lot of work, sensitization, training has been conducted. And I know some who are very, very good.
Yeah.
I've worked with some who are very dedicated, very passionate, and they make sure that they're looking out to make sure that the child is comfortable. All you want is to take the child through the justice process, not to do anything like we hear with adults that could happen at the police. Yeah. So, and when they decide to charge the child, they can charge the child and file the information in the children's court. And it will be heard. But usually there are a lot of rules that are very strict, even publicity. Cannot disclose the child's name. You cannot, all of that to protect the child so that the child is not stigmatized at the end of the day, because the child could be guilty or not guilty. So the procedure is specifically catered or designed to protect the child all the way, even giving evidence. Much of it is done in camera so that people, outside would not be sitting there, or the press would be there reporting everything that is done and stigmatizing the child. As I said earlier, the language also is different. Yeah. The harsh languages that is used against adults, and also after, perhaps, if the child has been found to have done what they were accused of, they're called actually alleged child offenders. Alleged child offender, yeah. ACOs, not accused persons. Not accused persons. There again, you see the language. Yes. And it's very important. It is. Because you cannot equate a child who you don't even know the background. Could be a very traumatic background. Yes. I mean, could have parents who just really are and that's very living common. Up to their responsibility. And they go and fall foul of the law. Do you equate that, the way you deal with that person, with the adult? No. With full, all his common sense, and who's just chosen to violate the law? You don't. You don't. Yes. You and don't. So there's the responsibility. And again, after that, the court makes orders, not sentence. Even if the court thinks that you should be detained somewhere, their orders. Okay. To detain you at. The order will specify. Specify where the child should be. They're supposed to create institutions, which the government hasn't yet. I urge it to do so, because the boys will go to mile 2. Joshua prison. Yeah, Joshua prison. But we need the residential care homes. We need homes where, places of detention. And that would aid rehabilitation. Of course. All that goes with it. And the females, I've been shouting about this for a very long time, need to get out of mile 2. No, it's very serious. You need to get out of mile 2 and somewhere else. when you say that, they say, well, yeah, but they have a wing. No, they should be out of there.
They should be out
the
of
wing
there.
is still inside the prisons. Not just the children, but the
women as well. Yeah. The women as well. Yeah. I like that in your response, you talked about the issue of publicity in relation to cases affecting children. And I think this is a very important issue to discuss now in the age of social media and online news outlets, where sometimes you see a case involving a child, and in the news reports you would see some form of information that identifies the child. What does the law say about this?
It is against the law. The Children's Act says so. And there are consequences. If somebody is taken to task and convicted, there are consequences. You should not. We have a duty to protect the child. Remember, somebody is innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
If it's a criminal case. So really, even if they're guilty, you do not, because that protects the child, allows the child afterwards to go through the rehabilitation process and be a very productive member of our society. The children are our future.
Yes.
Yeah, and one mistake, as they say, even 2 or even 3 by children, they could turn out very, very well. But if everybody knows about it, the small community we live in, add to that, your face is splashed on the paper. If you do that, it's against the law. If you're convicted, you'll pay fine or go to jail. Yes, there are reporting restrictions on that. And I think, the media is aware, I hope.
Yes.
There has been
some are aware, but once in a while you see a lapse here and there. And I think it's important to always reiterate that the privacy of the child should always, it's paramount. It should always be protected.
I know that the courts don't compromise unless the complaint doesn't come to, but if the court, realizes that is the situation, it will deal with the person. There are provisions that say that you can't do that. Yes.
So in your 23 years of legal practice, mashallah.
Oh, makes me sad. That's 23. I wish I hadn't mentioned it. Makes me feel old. But I went in very young.
Yes, yes. I think that's with quite a few of the female legal practitioners, because I discuss with some of them and they tell me, the senior ones, they tell me a number of years they've had practice. I'm like, wow, you don't look like you've been in practice for that long. Yes, we started really early. Yes.
That makes us feel good.
Yes, a lot of the female practitioners started really early, so yes. But in your years of legal practice, what are the challenges that you've observed or experienced in relation to litigating the rights of children in the Gambia?
Oh, the challenges, this system that we have, this patriarchy, affecting women and therefore affecting the girls and even the boys. The perception of how children should be treated and how they are treated. That is something that we always have to fight against.
Yes.
The understanding of a good section of society, when you talk about children's rights, is like, oh, it's foreign, because we don't have the right to discipline our kids anymore. We don't have the right to do this. The children can take us to the police. They can do. I think it all, comes down to education.
Yes.
I think the more we popularize the laws, very, very important, in the local languages.
Yes.
Let us popularize the laws. They are laws not just for those who can read, but for everybody. And knowledge is power. I think if the laws are popularized in the local languages, orally, anyhow, the population will understand that there is the need, indeed, to protect that child. Why do we bring up children and try to do it properly? Why do we do that? To protect the child. When they're born as babies, they're innocent. They don't know anything. They only scream and shout. Yeah. As they grow older, they are molded by society, which begins at home and outside in the school and the country at large. So it's a collective responsibility to take care of these children. So that we don't resist. That is one thing I want to say, so that parents do not resist, this need to allow children to enjoy these rights. They're nothing that is strange. They're just human rights. Yeah. Right to life, the right to health, good health, the right to education, the right to be free from harm.
Yes.
The right to protection by the state, protection by the parents and everybody, to care. Yes. These are the simple things that we're talking about. And So that we find resistance sometimes. The other thing also is that, as I said earlier, the facilities need to be there. Facilities, social welfare need to be really.
Yeah.
they
need support.
They need support.
They need support.
Because they
really
have to be.
Support.
There's a requirement of that a social welfare officer be present during each and every single case at the children's court. Yes, they need to be. Their presence there is a prerequisite.
That involves a lot of logistics.
Manpower, exactly. So, and it doesn't always, and I know that the courts do complain sometimes, and they have to ring and say, where's the social welfare officer? And they will tell you they're short-staffed. They need to be there, and they need to be well-trained so that they can perform their duties, because a lot rests, with them. With all the adoption, even conviction. Anytime the court wants to make a decision on the child, it needs a social welfare report. Most of the time it does. Oh yes, even custody. Yes, they insist before sentencing giving the order against the child. They need the report because they need to know the background of the child. The home study report. They produce that by visiting your home, the child's home, interviewing the adults who are taking care of the child, looking at the circumstances so that they can advise and recommend to the court how the child may be dealt with to avoid the child coming back, particularly if it's a criminal case. So these institutions that are involved in ensuring, the stakeholders, ensuring that the children do enjoy these rights and protections must be strengthened by government so that they can effectively do their work. Yes.
As a society, as people who are involved in the lives of children, what can we do?
As people, what can we do? I remember when we were growing up, not too long ago, when if your neighbor saw you getting engaged in what you shouldn't be, they will take care of it.
Yes.
They won't not necessarily beat you up, but they will tell you to go home and do other things. So I think society has let go of that, our African society. I say African because that's what we knew.
A sense of community.
Yes, sense of community. Sense of, it's not about just I'm only concerned about my child. I'm not saying we're all like that.
Yeah.
But we in the Teru, they say, are getting like that. I mean, it's very nice when I go to up country and I see that they still have a lot of that. And that gives psychologically, tells the children that, if everybody says what I'm doing is not right, then it's perhaps not right.
Yes.
But if only my parent, who is just my parent and determined to make my life a misery, especially if you're a teenager, you think your parents hate you.
You think they hate you, they're trying to curtail your freedom.
Exactly. So, but if they get the same rhetoric from all the adults around them, who not only condemn, well, not even condemn, but show care, show guidance, I think we've let go of a lot of that. The law aside, I think we ought to do much better. Parents need to do better than just providing the education, paying the expensive school fees, actually providing the time to be with your children and bring them up. Try to inculcate all the good values, good old traditional African values that were inculcated in you.
Yeah.
So time also, I know, because parents are work, but we have to find time to bring up the children.
I think you have to make time.
The children need to be brought up. Otherwise, they will bring themselves up.
Yes.
With the advent of these things, they will see everything and know everything that the parents don't even know. And you will not know your child.
Yes.
And so I think that I just wanted to, I think the parents need to take up the responsibility much and not just leave it to the school or outside.
I think that's really important because, like you said, with technology now, everything is at their fingertips, and children understand technology even better than...
And they spend more time on these things.
They spend more time on it. So, I think one time I read somewhere that, I think it was a hadith or something that said the way you raise your child should be different from the way you were raised, in the sense that you're growing up in different environments, in different generations. So you should align the way you train your child to what they are faced with. And I think that's really important.
That is important.
That is important
but the core traditional values don't change.
No, those don't change.
The values of, okay, we try. We're not perfect, but we try. But honesty and the decency and
integrity.
Yeah, those things are very important.
Yes.
And you inculcate those to people from the time they're children.
Yes.
And you hope for the best.
Yes,
no
you
guarantee.
hope for the best.
There's no guarantee.
You do hope for the best.
Yes,
So thank you so much for joining us.
Can
today,
I just say that
Mr.
I'm very encouraged by the advocacy I see in the young children.
Yes.
I'm very that is new.
Yes.
Most of us didn't have that when we were growing up.
But you set up the ground for us to be able to speak up, because the little that you may have done when you were in that field, it made it easier for us to.
Oh, the advocacy I admire.
Yes,
I admire whenever I see children talking about their own issues.
Yes.
Because we need to listen to them because they feel what they're telling you. It's an opportunity, and I think they also must be very responsible.
Yes.
To whom much is given,
much is expected.
All this protection. Let's hold on to the good old traditional African values. I always repeat. With the respect for elders, the respect for society, respect for authority, respect for yourself. All these things are also very, very important.
Yes.
Yes. Family, parents. Yeah. And you make yourself, very dear to people when you conduct yourself in certain way. Not just about my right, banging on the table. Rights come with responsibilities.
They do. They do.
Yes,
they do.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Ms. Jam. This was a very interesting and enlightening conversation. I have learned a lot from you, and I hope that the people watching the podcast would also learn from it and spread the information to the people around them, because we all need to do better in terms of protecting the rights of children. And as always, this was the Lawhub podcast, brought to you by Ndengo Nejeng and Lawhub Gambia, produced by Right Click. Until the next time, see you on the next episode.